My name is Jameisha. I'm part of a group of ENabled Warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. So we push the limits. We are mentally strong, and we can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jameisha, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. Experience the benefits of pure hive power with the bee-powered honey. This therapeutic blend of royal jelly, bee pollen, propolis, and raw honey is designed to support those heavy, low-energy kind of days while supporting your immune system, promoting mental clarity and encouraging overall balance. Try a spoonful on those sleepy mornings, napless afternoons, and before intense workouts. So go and click the link in the show notes and invest in your health today. Okay, let's get into the first part of our interview with today's guest. So this section focuses on the actual diagnosis, what their illness is, and how it affects our guest. Keep listening out for part 2 to find out how they coped and thrived afterward. And then in part 3, listen out for today's guest's answers in the super quick secrets round. Or should we say not so super quick secrets round? ENabled Warriors, our next guest on our show is a London-based filmmaker and video journalist. After being diagnosed with lupus in 2014, she founded You Look Okay to Me, an online space where she produces creative content about chronic illnesses and how they link to wider and social and cultural themes. Since her diagnosis, she's started creating content that would explore the chronic illness experience and how it links to wider social and cultural themes. Since then, she's been able to grow an audience of over 10,000 people on Instagram, and her work for You Look Okay to Me and her experience in film also contributed to getting a job in BBC News. She's currently doing her best to try to provide a platform for chronic illness stories whilst at the company. ENabled Warriors, please help me in welcoming the amazing Jameisha Prescod, everybody! Woo! Hey Jameisha, how you doing?
I'm not bad, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for being here. It's amazing. So let's get straight into our part 1 episode by chatting about your actual diagnosis. So on what kind of happened on that day when things went like a little bit weird for you?
It was never like an official sort of day where things went weird. It was kind of a slow process building up of different sort of experiences. I think I was from the age of like 16 to 18 was when I was realizing something wasn't quite right. I think from school I would sleep a lot, like I would just get very tired, but at that time I sort of thought it was me being lazy, not realizing in hindsight it was fatigue, and then getting random bits of pain all over my body. But once again, not being sure what it was, like assuming it was just too much time on the computer, and then it was just RSI or something, because where I would get my first symptoms would be in my small joints. But then it got to a point where I wanted to change my life because I thought I was causing my own problems. So I tried to eat healthier and I was working out every day. And so technically at my fittest is when I had my first actual big flare up. And I was just out for the count for a couple of weeks. And that's when I was like, okay, that's definitely something that's not quite right. And so that took a whole process of trying to convince, GPs and specialists and stuff that I felt like something wasn't quite right, but it took a long time for them to take me seriously.
Yeah, and that's quite a common thing with lupus diagnosis, isn't it? That it is not taken seriously enough. And it's amazing now, isn't it? Because you've got like celebrities like Selena Gomez who's come out with lupus and things. So you'd think it'd be taken a bit more seriously.
Yeah, but I think it's a mixture of things. I think they call lupus the great pretender. So it looks like a lot of other conditions, which happens with other chronic illnesses too. They tend to mirror each other. So then it's hard to diagnose it. So oftentimes the way they diagnose it is by ruling out other things and then sort of going back and saying, okay, maybe it is lupus. And then they'll do the blood work from that. But I think also if a lot of doctors or specialists, especially here, don't fully understand it, then they're going to just have trouble diagnosing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I find there's less of awareness for lupus in the UK than the US. So like when there's celebrities in the US talking about it, you've got like Selena Gomez, you've got like Toni Braxton. Lady Gaga doesn't have lupus, but I know that she thought she did at some point. So a lot of people are talking about it from them. But
Mm.
here we don't really have people that speak about it very much. So it's much less, there's much less awareness for it, both from the doctor end and the public end. So that's, I think, contributes to it not being taken seriously as much. But it's a shame because what that causes is longer diagnosis times for patients that just want to figure out what's going on with them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about what lupus briefly is? Just in case people
So
don't.
no worries. Lupus is an autoimmune disease. So essentially, for people that don't know what that is, it's, you know, your immune system doesn't work properly. So instead of simply focusing on, you know, the bad guys like any infections, it attacks the healthy tissue in the body instead. So that can cause a range of things like joint pain, muscle ache, fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, just a whole lot of symptoms, skin issues, stuff like that. Um, and it ranges in severity. So you have some people on the milder end. I'm on the milder end, luckily, where it's mainly those symptoms that I spoke about. But if you have a moderate to severe type of lupus, it can impact your organs, and that's where it gets quite nasty and it's harder to live with.
Wow, that sounds crazy. So, how does your lupus affect you every day? I mean, I'm guessing it's different for every person, as they normally are.
Definitely different for every person, and it can be different depending on the day or the time of year. So for me, mainly the three symptoms is joint pain, muscle ache, fatigue. Those are like the main three for me. Fatigue is one of the hardest ones because like joint pain, I have joint pain all the time, but it comes in waves of severity. So sometimes like it can get really, really bad that if I feel like I want to throw up or I can't think about anything else. But if I talk about a daily basis, it'll be joint pain that I can kind of get around with and live with. But the fatigue kind of just knocks you out for the count. Like I can't really do anything in a fatigue state. Like I can't work because my brain's just too tired because you're mentally and physically tired. Um, and then the muscle aches tend to come sometimes like I haven't done anything that physical. Like I could have done something really basic and I feel like I've just run a marathon, which is quite annoying. um, and then like seasonal stuff. So as the sun starts to come out, I mean, we're in quarantine, so it doesn't affect me right now, but lupus is also photosensitive. So sometimes you can get a flare up just by being in the sun, or I start to get rashes on my face when the sun comes out as well.
Wow.
But guess I don't have to worry about that for now. So
No, unless you're gonna go sit in the garden or something.
probably not.
I was gonna say actually, like, how is your condition affected by heat at all, and or cold? Like, have you got that kind of temperature kind of transition? Because I know I do. So good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that definitively because no one's ever like been like this is exactly it. But I do know that when it goes from when there's a change in a shift in the seasons, so the major ones, like when it goes from winter to spring or autumn to winter,
Mm.
those like transitions of when it gets from hot to cold and then cold to hot again,
Yeah.
those ones my body doesn't like very much at all. Not sure if it's the weather or not though. Like I do know that when it's rainy and damp, my joints are horrible. Like they're terrible. But I'm more so affected by the sunlight rather than the temperature though. Sunlight is definitely the one that, you know, like I think last year, 2019, we had a horrible heat wave. I think we got to like 40 degrees. I actually had to call in. I couldn't go to work. I was just like, I can't come in. This is just, I think I will end up in hospital if I come in at this temperature. So I had to stay home. But yeah,
Wow. So how did your boss respond to that? I mean, was he kind of like really, really great about it, or was it more of a, it's just hot outside, just come in? My old boss would have just said the latter one.
Uh, luckily, so when I joined my new job, it was they already knew about what I had. That was from the start in the contract. They understood that that was it. So I had an access meeting over the phone where someone, you know, I didn't even have to vouch for myself. They did it on my behalf while I was on the phone and basically said she has fatigue, so she would need to work from home when needed. Um, her sick leave, you know, needs to be honored basically, and it just there was a lot of sort of adjustments that were made. So because of that, and the fact that they already knew, they
Mm.
were more than happy to respect those boundaries. So I didn't have any problems with that. Luckily, I've had that in the past, but this job is
Mm.
been really good with my condition.
That's really good. So you so it sounds like you told them like straight away about your condition and things.
In this case, yeah, because
Yeah.
they knew from the jump. Like I got in on the fact that they knew that from the start, even before I applied. So
That's good. That's good. Because for a lot of people, they aren't willing to kind of open up about that with their employer, especially if it's a new employer. So I mean, I know I hid mine for about a year. I didn't tell anybody that I had MS when I was first diagnosed. So it's quite hard to tell people that, I think.
I mean, I was like that before this job. I used to hide it. Well, first job I had was like retail, and so I was diagnosed around the same time I had the job, so I didn't tell them until after because I thought I could just do it and didn't have to say anything, but it
Yeah,
clearly
me
became
too.
a problem. Yeah, it comes up eventually, so I had to tell them. Other jobs after that, like I would say something actually, but they just wouldn't honor it. So you can say something, it doesn't mean that they're gonna actually care about it very much. Um, so like jobs after that where they were more like I had to get like a retail like cinema type jobs, like they would listen to what I had to say, I would tell them, and then like I think I worked in View Cinema in Leicester Square for 2 days and quit because of that. Like I told them from the beginning, I said I've got this condition, blah blah blah, and their contract is very similar to 0 hour, but it's technically not. It's a 4 hour contract, and then they give you more hours. It's really really shady, but like um I told them, look, I can do a maximum of 12 hours. And they were like, okay, that's fine, no problem. And then the first week on the schedule, they had me down as 28 hours.
Oh gosh.
And my first shift was 8 hours, and the second one was 9. And I was just like, I told you. And then I went to them, and they just went, well, it is Easter, so we tend to ask people to do a bit more. And I was just like, well, I already told you about my condition. They were like, well, so did 2 days, which I shouldn't have done because it made me very sick, and then took the money and quit.
I don't blame you if
So
you feel like that. That's terrible.
not all employers are understanding. The job after that I got fired from for the same reason. So it is hard to know when the right time is, but if you have a decent employer, it does definitely help.
Yeah, totally. And it's finding that decent employer is hard, man. It is hard.
It's really hard,
God.
really really hard.
So going back to your diagnosis quickly,
Mhm.
did you know anything about lupus beforehand, or was it kind of come out of the blue completely?
Very minimal information I knew about lupus at the time. So it's so weird. I remember watching America's Next Top Model. That was the first time I ever heard about it because one of the models on the show had it. And I just remember she kept talking about it. She's like, oh, because of my lupus, blah, 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 blah. All I know about it was that she got kind of tired and her hair fell out. So that's all I knew. So I just thought it was a condition that makes your hair fall out. So when it got to the point where that might have been the case for me, I don't have hair loss, luckily, and I hope it stays that way. But because of that, I didn't think I had it because I was just like, oh yeah, well I know this is the one that makes your hair go, so definitely not lupus. And then obviously it was from there I started reading up about it because I know doctors say don't read your symptoms online or don't Google, but I mean without that I wouldn't have got a diagnosis because I wouldn't have known anything. I wouldn't have known what to ask for. So that's how I learned more about it after that point.
Yeah, sometimes that is a good thing. To go and Google it, but like my doctor into hospital literally said, just go and find out more about MS on your own. Just go and Google it on
Yeah.
your own. And that was the worst thing I could have ever done because I didn't know anything about MS. I didn't know whether it was, I didn't realize that it was different for each person. So like I was reading about stories of people online who were like waking up and going blind and things. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to happen to me. But obviously like, no, because MS is different for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? It really is. Are you currently on treatments to manage your condition at all?
Yeah, I'm only on one. So I'm on the milder treatment, which is good. It's called hydroxychloroquine sulfate, which has been in the news a lot lately because apparently there's
Yeah.
rumors it can treat coronavirus, which is amazing for people with lupus and arthritis because the supply is quite low now. But yeah, I'm only on that. Luckily, don't have to be on immunosuppressants or steroids at the moment, so that's good.
That is good. That is good, and it's shocking, really, that medication can help out with this whole virus thing. We'll get into that like kind of later in a separate episode. But like, wow, yeah, that's interesting to talk about. To be honest, let's definitely talk about that. Can you describe like the lowest point of your diagnosis? Like, was there a time when you just felt like you couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you didn't know what was going on, and how did you get out of that?
I think the lowest point probably was earlier in the diagnosis when I was still at uni, because I got diagnosed right at the beginning of uni, like a couple of days after actually starting or enrolling, was my diagnosis date, like my diagnosis appointment.
Mm.
So that was hard in a sense of I still, first of all, didn't really know exactly what I had, or even though I'd researched it, to be then told you have it and then understanding how it affects you is a whole process. But then learning that what I maybe thought I could do in uni might not actually be what I can do, and struggling to go to the lectures in the first place because that was just a struggle, you know, like falling asleep in school and stuff like that. All of that was quite difficult. And then when you're watching everybody else be able to do what they want and be able to make all the films they want, and I didn't really make friends in the first year of uni anyway, so like it was all just all of that around that time was quite tricky.
And I imagine
I
as well, like having all of these new people that you're meeting every day and stuff, and like, do you disclose it? Do you tell people I've just been diagnosed with lupus? What do I do? Like, how did you manage that?
I didn't really tell anybody because I wasn't really hiding it. I just didn't say anything. But it was good that I was able to tell the uni, because the uni was very good at offering disabled student allowance, which actually was very helpful. So that was the main thing. I think that's where actually it came out that I had that, because I was getting taxis to work. They give you reduced discounted taxi service to school basically. Because sometimes if the lecture's really early and it's like at rush hour, it's horrible when you have fatigue and joint pains to have to be standing for the whole hour and a half or whatever. So then I would sometimes get a cab, and then people would be really confused because they were just like, how come you got a cab from Croydon to North Greenwich? Like, that's expensive during rush hour. Doesn't make sense. And then they'd be like, oh, because, and then it will come out from there. But didn't really hide it. It's just, it was all these new people anyway. So it was almost like I didn't want the first thing to be, hey, I got lupus.
It's a hard thing, isn't it? When you first meet people, it's like, what do I say? If I say anything, you know, what happens as well when they kind of invite you for a night out or something, which is the kind of uni thing to do. Like, what did you do about that?
I didn't go out anyway. That wasn't really my thing back then, so I didn't have a problem with that. Like I first went out when I was 21, so like 21, 22 was when I first went out. I was not interested in that anyway, so luckily they didn't really have a problem there. I was quite, well, I'm still introverted, but I was very much more introverted back then anyway, so it was very easy just to be like, oh no, I'm all right, it's not really my thing. It was easy to just pass it off as not your thing rather than I'm going to be too tired. Where it was more of a problem was less inside uni and more friends I had outside of uni, where they had turned 18 after me. So I turned 18 in September, so like I'm one of the older people, and they're like May, June. So I've already been 18. I'm allowed to drink. I'm allowed to go to the club, but they've just turned it like later in the year, so they're quite excited.
Yeah.
And they kept wanting me to come with them, and I kept saying no, partly just because I'm too tired. And they got quite frustrated because of that. They were quite annoyed, but I don't regret it. But some of them stopped talking to me after that because they're just like, oh, you're no fun. It's fine. You know, it's just like, it is what it is.
And that's hard as well when people kind of, you know, stop talking to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's only happened mainly once because of the condition. It was obviously because of other things in the friendship as well, but for one person in particular, yeah, from there they didn't understand that having this part-time job, going uni and getting diagnosed with a chronic illness is a lot. So I'm so sorry if I can't come clubbing every time, you know, like I'm really sorry, but I'm not.
No, it's super important to just, you know, you be you kind of thing and just do what you need to do. I think that's cool. Good on you for standing up to them. Enabled Warriors, that's it for part 1. In the next part, we will discuss the amazing things that our guest today has done since their diagnosis. Warriors, look out for part 2. And if there is anything that we've spoken about so far that you can relate to, then please tell us in the comments, and remember to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening today. Are you ready to fight back against your chronic illness and go from being disabled to enabled? Do you want to be an enabled warrior, someone who's brave, strong, and confident? and someone who's ready to find a way to achieve awesome things despite a diagnosis. This is your invitation. Check out DISabledtoENabled.com for articles and reviews to find out how you can become enabled too. Subscribe to the podcast to always be in the know. If you think this podcast is better than sleeping in on a Sunday, tickle that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening. And make sure to share this episode with someone who needs some inspiration. Want to ask your questions to future guests? Make sure to join our Enabled Warriors tribe on Facebook and look out for our question posts. Before we go, check out DISabledtoENabled on Instagram for posts that tell it like it is. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.